Chapter 3. Tom. Tom was tired of the drive down the mountain. Tired of leaving Tricia, tired of walking through that jail door, and tired of seeing those three men, if that's what a person wanted to call them. There'd been a significant portion of those on Coles Mountain who had pushed for the death penalty to be enforced on the day Wade and Dylan had dragged these men here. Tom couldn't say he hadn't considered it, but it was important to him to have this done the proper way, if at all possible. The Cole brothers were among those who pushed for getting this thing done. Tom could tell it had taken everything Dylan had to bring them back alive, especially since he'd been bringing Sky back half dead. There was a long list of charges against the three men. Not only what they had done to Jessie and Sky, not the least of which was the attempted murder against her and the actual murder of Frankie, Jessie's father. In addition, the men had boasted about committing a host of other crimes as they had chased down Sky and Jessie. Tom reckoned it was a good enough confession for him. He hoped any judge who made it here would feel the same way. The doc had only half-patched up Tony, mainly because he hadn't expected him to live more than a few miles travel down the road, let alone the whole way back. But he had made it. Now Tony rotted in a cell along with the other two, still the orneriest one in there. As mean and sneaky as the sheriff knew him to be, he never turned his back on that one. Tom gathered up the meals from the back seat of his cruiser and went through the front door of the Colton jail. His deputy sat in a chair, feet up on the desk, and a book in his hand. Tom tried to rotate the officers so this lonely post wouldn't be so bad. Even once the culprits were taken care of, someone would still need to be there to watch for anyone with criminal intent moving through the area and for gangs of infected looking for trouble. Tom handed the deputy a plate of food he'd kept hot in a thermal bag and a couple of snacks. "How's everything been?" "Quiet out on the streets. I haven't even heard a piece of trash blow by." The deputy hooked his thumb toward the entry to the cells. "They're another story. Every so often they get all riled up. I just ignore them and it calms down." Tom tipped his head to the officer. "I appreciate you volunteering. It's all part of the job." There was no question in Tom's mind that this was probably the stupidest situation he had been in. Making the hour trip down the mountain almost every day seemed idiotic. But as of right now, Colton had the jail, the only controlled place to keep these animals. Tom put a hand to the smooth door handle and heaved a sigh. People kept asking if he wanted them dead, as if he questioned that these three deserved death sentences. There was no doubt that he wanted them in a grave, many times over for what they did to his cousin. But Tom was a lawman and, as such, had sworn to uphold the law. More than that, he believed in it. And sheriff or not, he was not going to just up and kill people without the proper procedure. Not until he knew, without a doubt, there was no proper procedure to be had. So, he'd been on the radio to all the towns in the area and finally located a judge. What's more, one willing to travel to Colton. It seemed though the regular courts had locked their doors as more and more people got sick, this judge had started an old-fashioned circuit. The magistrate added Colton to his rounds. He was only a few stops away. If everyone was patient, these men would get the judgment they deserved. Tom pulled the door open and entered the cell area, scanning it with a sharp eye. On seeing him, Tony rose and limped to the bars closest to Tom. "Coward. Keeping us in here. There ain't no law. Be a man, fight me." Ignoring the taunts, Tom crouched and quickly scooted Tony's packaged meal through the bars attached to the gray concrete floor and walked on. Tony stretched through the bars up to his shoulder as he tried to reach the sheriff, but Tom made a wide berth. Calvin whined his usual excuses. "I'm not a bad man. I just got caught up with bad people. I can mend my ways. I was a sales guy before the world went to crap. I'm not normally like this." The slimy man wasn't kidding anyone. He'd be up to the same evil tricks if he ever got out of here. Pete was quiet, as usual, with the typical confused expression covering his face. What was he confused about? Being in jail? Or that murder was a punishable offense? The sheriff gritted his teeth as he picked up the customary mess they'd made. It was their ritual to throw dishes and leftover food out of their cells and onto the block wall across from it. Tom had solved part of the problem by cutting their rations and serving everything in plastic containers. Still, they did what they could. Tom grumbled to himself that this would all be over soon. As he left the room, he glanced over his shoulder. He hated these men and any like them. He always had, but the anger burned hotter now. The world was in turmoil. People needed all the help they could get. And there were goons like this out there looking to become tyrants. Tom said goodbye to his deputy, promising to send his replacement down in the morning. As he got into his cruiser, he glanced into the back seat. A few days ago, he'd caught Jesse trying to sneak a ride to town. The boy had refused to tell him why, so he'd told Jesse he needed to let Sky know what he was up to. Jesse hadn't been too happy with him about that. Tom slid the cruiser into drive, reminding himself he needed to talk to Sky about the incident.